I was driving to work this morning. I was running a little bit late, and I realized that every single day we make so many decisions, just every second. Like I was a tiny bit late, and so I thought I'd make up the time by going just a little faster, still the speed limit. So anyway, you have to make that decision when you're kind of in a hurry to make up the time. Like if you're approaching a red light, you're making a decision which car you're going to get behind in all the lanes based on who's going to go fastest just by the back of the car. If you see, if you see a car that's the hubcaps are falling off and it's hanging on the ground, there's just black smoke pouring out the back of it. And clearly it's not a young person. The head is way lower than the seat. Just kind of. I'm not saying anything wrong about it, but that's not the one to get behind if you're in a hurry. You want to get behind a sports car. You want to get behind not a gardening truck. If you see a lawnmower in a truck, they're not in a hurry either. They don't really want to. Or a VW van. When those people that are still driving those 1960 VW bus things, they're still hippies and they're like driving around, hitting a little bit of the thing, and that big old huge wheel. Nobody's hitting the pedal to the metal on those VW buses or any kind of bus. A prison bus, they're not in a hurry either. Don't get behind them. But because that is every single second. If you really think about it, all the decisions that we're making all the time, life is more complicated now. I mean, we have to make decisions about everything, whereas back when the cavemen were around, they were like just you hunted or you gathered, or your biggest decision was fleeing. Do I run now or do I wait a second? That's all you had to do. Now everything is a huge decision. You go to the shampoo aisle in the grocery store, and there's shampoos for thick hair, for thin hair, for fine hair, for wavy hair, for blonde hair. Cave people, they had one shampoo. That's all they had. For dry, brittle hair. That's all they had.
Hi, here's a dancer. She's clearly spinning in one direction. Or is she? It's been said that if you see her going counterclockwise, you use more of your left brain. On the other hand, if you see her going clockwise, you use more of your right brain. Most of us see her turning in one direction, but you can use all your brain power and make her spin the other way. Try it! If you start doing math, will it go counterclockwise? And if you think about something creative, will it turn clockwise? That actually happened to me. The simple brain test reveals some very interesting things. For example, my friends and I all saw the dancer spin in the same direction, and only after we trained ourselves were we able to make it spin the other way. So maybe birds of a feather flock together? Do we subconsciously seek those whose personalities are most similar to ours? Or in your case, if your friends differ from you, maybe opposites attract? Then, there's that nature versus nurture debate. How much does our brain dominance influence our hobbies, and vice versa? So, is it really that simple? Are you only right or left-brained? Of course not. In order to function most effectively, both sides should work at the same time, but we still have our dominant tendencies.
The division of the brain is something neuroscientists don't like to talk about anymore. It enjoyed a sort of popularity in the 60s and 70s after the first split brain operations, and it led to a sort of popularization which has since been proved to be entirely false. It's not true that one part of the brain does reason and the other does emotion. Both are profoundly involved in both. It's not true that language resides only in the left hemisphere. It doesn't. Important aspects are in the right. It's not true that visual imagery is only in the right hemisphere. Lots of it is in the left. And so in a sort of fit of despair, people have given up talking about it. But the problem won't really go away, because this organ, which is all about making connection, is profoundly divided. The right hemisphere gives sustained, broad, open vigilance, alertness, where the left hemisphere gives narrow, sharply focused attention to detail. Away from all those things that we used to say, reason and imagination, let me make it very clear. For imagination, you need both hemispheres. Let me make it very clear. For reason, you need both hemispheres. So if I had to sum it up, I'd say the world of the left hemisphere, dependent on denotative language and abstraction, yields clarity and power to manipulate things that are known, fixed, static, isolated, decontextualized, explicit, general in nature, but ultimately lifeless. The right hemisphere, by contrast, yields a world of individual, changing, evolving, interconnected, implicit, incarnate, living beings within the context of the lived world, but in the nature of things never fully graspable, never perfectly known. And to this world it exists in a certain relationship. The knowledge that's mediated by the left hemisphere is, however, within a closed system. It has the advantage of perfection, but the perfection is bought ultimately at the price of emptiness. There's a problem here about the nature of the two worlds. They offer us two versions of the world, and obviously we combine them in different ways all the time. We need to rely on certain things to manipulate the world, but for a broad understanding of it, we need to use knowledge that comes from the right hemisphere. And I also think, rather more importantly, there's a sort of hall of mirrors effect. The more we get trapped into this, the more we undercut and ironize things that might have led us out of it. And we just get reflected back into more of what we know about what we know about what we know. And I just want to make it clear, I'm not against whatever it is the left hemisphere has to offer. Nobody could be more passionate in an age in which we neglect reason and we neglect careful use of language. Nobody could be more passionate than myself about language and about reason. It's just that I'm even more passionate about the right hemisphere and the need to return what that knows to a broader context. It turned out that Einstein's thinking somehow presaged this thing about the structure of the brain. He said, the intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant, but has forgotten the gift.